And welcome in, everybody, to the 2024 Summit City Sports Report Roundtable for week number 7. My name is Jeff Mahoney. We got Tim Atkinson, Hunter Sosenheimer, Joe Northern, and Thad Goff joining us. We were at 5 games last week. We're going to start off with Snyder hosting Homestead. Snyder getting the 35-0 win. Of course, you look at that score and you think, wow, Snyder just dominated Homestead. Yes, they did on the field, but also Homestead playing without their 2 best offensive players, and the quarterback, Mike White, and the wide receiver, Carter Kennedy, just a junior, both players just a junior. And what we saw from Snyder in that game is getting more of the defensive guys involved. Landon Fry pretty much played the whole game as a fullback for the Panthers until they got that running clock. I mean, he was an absolute difference maker, sealing the edge there and creating big holes for both Braylon Burton, who got the start in that game and did score the I guess he scored the second touchdown for the Panthers, and Jordan Davis as well. Both running backs looked good in that game. Davis rushing for 53 yards and 2 touchdowns. Burton with 49 yards and 1 touchdown. One thing I will say about Braylon Burton is for a freshman, he's got a good-sized frame, but he initiates contact. And when you're downfield and you can initiate that contact with the defender, then the chances of your feet staying on the ground and you being able to keep your run going is much greater. And we saw many of times where Braylon Burton got hit, and after contact, he was still able to pick up about 3 to 5 yards. So great job by the Snyder offense. Vance 4 of 5 passing with a touchdown. Landon Fry also getting involved in the passing game for them. We've always talked about his abilities as a linebacker to intercept passes. Entering the game, I believe it's 3 on the season, but did well receiving the ball as well. And then looking at the defense, Azeel Jordan was a huge difference maker. He had 3 tackles for a loss. He's one of those guys that week by week just keeps saying his name a little bit more. So one of the guys that's stepping up for that defense. You know, looking at Homestead, I think one of the bright spots, and let me get my screen shared, but one of the bright spots for Homestead was knowing that they can put Sam Stewart in the backfield, and he's going to have a ton of success for you. Here on the Homestead stats, it says 1 carry for 3 yards. Well, one of those got called back, and it was close to about a 70-yard touchdown run. And that play was very, very unique because Brandon Logan was in pursuit, and these 2 guys met at the second level, and Sam Stewart was able to get away from the initial tackle, and then it was a foot race to the goal line between Stewart and Logan. Looked like if there was about another 20 yards to go, that possibly Logan would have caught Stewart. But in that situation, when those 2 guys met at the second level, Stewart was going this way and Logan was going this way. He had reverse tracks and try to track down Stewart. But Sam Stewart, for as big as he is, 6'2", 220 pounds, and he looks it on the field. He looks absolutely great in a uniform. He is very, very fast. And, boy, seeing that play right there, it was pretty obvious to me why Purdue wanted to hop on him and get him offered this past summer. So he's committed to Purdue. Good for him. But, yeah, let me show you guys right here. As you can see, the handoff from Evan England. Not much of a hole there, but he's such a big body. Now you see Brandon Logan now chasing him down. But when those 2 guys met, Stewart was running north and Logan was running south. So you do have to take that into consideration. But that was a very, very fun play to see. Well, I guess we don't have Landon on today. I think he said he was on vacation, but we'll talk more about that Carroll Wayne game later.
Jeff, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Looking at, it does show they only had 39 yards rushing, did Homestead. Was that a byproduct of them loading the box since White wasn't playing? Were they just forcing and daring Homestead to throw the ball?
Yeah, single safety deep. And then the other guy back there is Alan Bolton, who had a great game as well. But, with Brandon Logan, you can get away with that stuff. I mean, he's hawking interceptions down left and right in that game. If we get over here to Brandon's defensive stats, says 3 tackles, 1 interception, had the fumble recovery and a forced fumble, and that was on the kickoff where he scored the touchdown. So his 1 interception, he had ran back for a touchdown, but there was holding called on the play. So honestly, Tim, I feel like Homestead just way undermanned in that game, having to play without their 2 best offensive threats. And we all know that Snyder's defense is very, very good.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that too, I mean, just 3 first downs all game. I mean, they won the penalty battle. I mean, it shows 8 penalties for Snyder for 104 yards compared to the four penalties and 30 yards for Homestead. But that first down differential, that's something you don't see very often from a 6A school like Homestead.
Yeah, no, I mean, you kind of knew right away when Michael White wasn't out there and then Carter Kennedy wasn't out there that it was going to be a long day for Homestead. They've had a hard time getting the run established. Thrash has done a great job for them, but this offensive line is not your typical Homestead offensive line. I would say they're probably down about 30 to 35 pounds a man from what we've seen in the past. But yeah, Tim, I mean, you just didn't have a very good feeling about Homestead that night once you found out the 2 studs weren't playing.
And coming off that disappointing loss against Carroll, they already had a chip on their shoulder. So once they knew they were going to be able to game plan of just throwing everybody in, like you said, just 1 safety and load the box, I don't really care if you have everybody. I mean, that's a tough defense to deal with when you're loading the box like that.
And we did see 1 play with Brandon Logan in the Wildcat, and there was not much room for him to operate. When he took that snap, he was able to get 2 yards. It's probably the hardest 2 yards you guys will ever see. But, Tim, his burst from that Wildcat position when he knows he's going to tuck it and run towards this line of scrimmage, that burst is something to see.
Yeah.
He is just – I don't think we give him as much credit as maybe he deserves for his strength, athleticism, and just flat-out speed. And I'm not sure why, but he is definitely elite.
Yeah, there's a reason he recruited at the highest level. There's no doubt about that, Jeff.
Yeah, Notre Dame did a great job of getting on board and offering him, and he's going to be a great player for him.
Yeah, and I love, I think it was a Swami tweeted something out about turning Landon Fry to football, and Brandon Logan immediately retweeted that and said he can do both. How crazy would that be to have 2 kids in the same class from the same high school go to Power 5 schools and play 2 sports? I mean, if that don't say anything about the progression of Fort Wayne, I don't know what does.
I don't see what Notre Dame would be missing out on. I don't think it'd be a wasted scholarship at all if they were to say, "Hey, Fry, you've had a great senior season. We'd like to, have you on campus to do both."
Yeah, easy, Jeff. You're not going to take him away from my Hoosiers. He's destined for B-Town right there. So Coach Sig has got to get on that. And maybe get Landon over there on the dual side. I don't know if there's been one since maybe James Hardy. I'm sure there might have been some, but I'm talking locally. There hasn't been any 2-way players like that since Hardy at a big-time Division I Power 5 level.
Yeah, and when Hardy did it, he was playing basketball and football, and that just speaks major, major volumes for a school like IU.
Right, yeah, and that's harder. It's back-to-back seasons. Where you have football and then you have the break and then the baseball. Now I know baseball on the collegiate level at that is pretty much an all year round deal. You always got to be training. And they start games really early. Usually the North schools go down and play South with the weather. But I say, why not, Landon? Let's get you in the cream and crimson also on the gridiron.
Well, he could do it for sure. He's got the body type.
Right.
No doubt about it. He carries his weight very well, and he's a very instinctual player.
Yeah. And how about Aaron Vance? I saw on social media before you moved to the other games. In his church, he did a sermon. How about the 17, 18-year-old kid standing in front of a congregation and laying down a sermon? I thought that was outstanding. Just a little FYI out there for you guys.
Yeah, and Coach Tittman said as much as this is just a great, great kid. His mentality and the way he approaches the game and just how he is such a good person off the field made it very easy for him to label him QB1 for the season.
Sure. The last question, Burton. He didn't on film or watching our replays. He doesn't have the body of a freshman. He's not super tall right now. Still got some room for growth, but he looks really strong out there, and that's a great burst of speed right off the handoff. How impressed were you with him, Jeff?
Yeah, very impressed, and it's not just the burst of speed and. Obviously we can't post every single play. There are some 8-yard and some 10-yard runs. I know. There are some 8 and 10-yard runs where you see exactly what I was talking about as far as initiating the contact. When you initiate the contact, you can take a player's half of his body away and get him off balance, which makes it easier for him to break those tackles. And it just comes natural to him, and the greats have it.
Yeah, and it looked like right there, especially on that play, great blocking by the offensive line as well, yeah. which has been a work in progress for Coach Tip. We know that, with only the one returner coming into this year, which you're always going to have some kind of look at that pull right there from, I think that was Sawyer Titman on the nice pull right there into the hole to open that up. But this should be a good building block for Snyder moving forward. 3-1. Carroll still has to play Homestead, still has to play Northrop and Northside. I think that Northside is going to be a battle to end the season. So, if Snyder wins out, you never know what could happen. But boy, does Lure seem like they got the winning recipe this year as well.
I'd agree. And yeah, Tim, to your point, you see Sawyer Titman here pulling from the left guard position, and then you see Landon Fry.
Yeah.
They were doing that all game long. Landon Fry, once he gets his hands on you, you're going nowhere.
Yeah.
Sam Stewart was able to defeat that block twice, but those two guys are battling all game long. You got two Division I guys battling over there at Spooler Stadium.
Yeah, that was awesome to see for sure.
Hunter, you are up next. Southside gets its first win of the season, the second win of Coach Goodwill's career, and both wins, ironically, have come against Concordia. But this was a 9-7 game on a night where the conditions were not favorable for the quarterbacks, yet Concordia throws it 36 times, completing 12 passes. A little surprised by that one, Hunter?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very shocking to see that number with the 36 throws and only rushing it 10 times. But you just look at the weapons that Concordia does have, and it's the wide receivers and Avery Cook and Noah Trent. Those two help to lead the way in the receiving game for Concordia. Michael Henley Jr., he's another player. I don't think that I think he kind of turned on the spotlight here for Concordia today or on Friday night. Had a huge catch to get them down the field and get them into the touchdown range where they did convert a TD pass to Noah Trent. So Michael Henley Jr., I think, is going to be one guy to watch, just a freshman for Coach Manigal. So he'll be one to watch going up here for Concordia.
Wow. And Michael Henley, who goes 6 foot, 179 pounds. So he probably doesn't look like a freshman on the field either.
No, he does not. I think they had him lined up at the tight end position too as well. But yeah, he did a tremendous job there, helping create some blocks as well, and then did a tremendous job catching the balls through the air.
And obviously not playing without we're playing without Belschner again for Concordia. So hopefully they can get him ready for the postseason run here. Sloppy play on the field or just a great defensive battle and conditions? I mean, it was a low-scoring game. What'd you see out there from both teams?
Yeah, the rain was shifting towards the press box a little bit, and the wind obviously was a factor. I mean, like you said, Concordia ended up throwing the ball 36 times. They did get a few passes that were off, but Southside turned to the flex bone formation on their offense. They involved Chris Moon, who is a junior. One name that I actually hadn't heard of coming into this contest here on Friday night. And then you had Silas Porty as well. They both did a tremendous job, and Malone on the ground as well for Southside. One thing I did notice, though, I don't know if this is the thing that Coach Goodwill is still trying to figure out, but KJ Alexander did play at the quarterback position for the whole entire first half. And then coming out of the halftime break, they went to Robert Murphy for 3 drives and then went back to Alexander. They were missing one of their wide receiver targets and TJ Snow as well. But they involved a tight end that got them their lone touchdown of the game to Blake Smith was his name. He was a tight end, 18-yard touchdown to him. And it seemed like a lot of the defensive pressure came from a zone coverage, I would say, because both touchdowns that were caught, one from each team, were kind of like wide open on the far side. Like there was a wide receiver wide open, ready to make a catch. So they did a tremendous job. The quarterbacks both did reading those.
But look at that burst of speed there by Javier White, who burst in there for a sack. How was his game?
Yeah, he did a tremendous job defensively for Southside. And then DeMarcus Barr and Richard Allen in the secondary, they all did a tremendous job. They brought a blitz from the safeties at one point in the game. I don't think I caught the highlight of it, but it was a tremendous blitz. And then White, like you said, came right up the middle too as well. And then going to it, the special teams game, I think was a good factor for the Archers. Court T. Wallace, also a soccer player as well for Southside, had a 25-yard field goal, and it was against the wind, and he ended up putting it through the uprights. Was a tremendous kick there for him, and that ended up what would be the scoring and getting Southside the win there in that game.
Yeah, and here's the field goal attempt that you see. So definitely huge anytime you can get out there and get points on special team, get your kicking game involved. Coach Goodwell slowly but surely is turning this thing around, getting all facets of the game dialed in. You guys just got to remember that what he inherited there at Southside was a little tough. Remember that last season there under Coach Lee. I think they ended up finishing off the year with an interim head coach. So but Coach Goodwill, I believe, is by far the right man for the job there. A perfect fit for that program.
Hey, Hunter, Jacob Levitt, he had some great numbers of defense for Concordia, 12 total tackles and 1.5 for loss. That senior, so he's put together a nice season as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He had a tremendous game. I mean, he was in the backfield on every single play. When Southside was running the flex bone formation, you just saw him. He was reading it very, very well from his position. I was able to get in the backfield multiple times, and then he did a tremendous job, came up with some huge sacks in the game too as well. And then Riley Ripke, who is actually the kicker and punter for Concordia, he did a tremendous job on the defensive end too as well. Him and Levitt were both tremendous defensively for Concordia.
Yeah, Jeff, Coach Manigault talked highly about Ripley when we talked to him. From what you remember, I mean, leader, can do anything, any position on the field. I know Coach Manigault really loves Ripke.
And here you see Riley Ripke right there. Well, up next, we're heading over to Thad, who had New Haven at Columbia City. And Thad, I think most people thought that Columbia City would win the game, but 70-0. I think that may have shocked a few people and now have people thinking, well, maybe Columbia City is a team that could knock off East Noble for that NE8 championship, the way they showcased their talent this past Friday night.
They've definitely got the toughness that they can hang with an East Noble. The question is, can they have the balance to hang with an East Noble? Of course, that game's coming up later this week. This past Friday, the formula for Columbia City was very simple, and it was very unsurprising. Run the football. Grayson Bradbury threw only one pass in the whole game. That was the only pass play Columbia City called in the whole game. Other than that, it was just run the football. The most frequent, you see the stats right there. Trace Parrish was the most frequently used back. Landon Fazio broke some big gains. Landon Atkins, he got in late in the game and broke a few big games. Stratton Fuller had a few good carries and a touchdown late in the first half. So the dangerous thing about Columbia City is they can run the football, and I've talked about how they put so many backs in the backfield. They've got a whole variety of different reliable backs. You can give the ball to a Trace Parrish, and he can get it done between the tackles. So you can give the ball to a Landon Fazio and run a counter play. You can do the same thing with Gavin Smith and with Stratton Fuller. You can just use these different weapons in so many different ways, and it also helps. That lead block right there was thrown by Lucas Kumichael, and he was used as a lead blocker on several of Columbia City's, on a number of Columbia City's run plays, but he helped to spring Fazio free on that gain and on several others as well.
Wow, and you see Fazio here after he takes the handoff, the ball's covered with both arms. That's because those guys line up so close to the line of scrimmage that you never know when one of those big arms from a defensive lineman could come through and swipe that ball away. So great job of protecting the football. And, the thing is with Grayson Bradbury, Thad, is that he can definitely throw the ball. He's had a great senior season doing that. Only the one passing attempt this past Friday night. As you can see, he's got 3 games of over 100 yards passing, which for Columbia City standards is, Patrick Mahomes-like. But with Bradbury, you feel like Coach Fox didn't want to show anything on tape for their matchup this week against East Noble?
Well, either that or he was just playing to the conditions. It was raining, it was windy. So since Columbia City has such a reliable run game, the formula was probably, let's just run the ball, let's just possess the football, work the clock, and not worry about having to put it in the air 13, 15, 20 plus times a game. And let's just rely on our offensive line and our multitude of backs that we can lean on. That's probably what the formula was for Coach Fox.
Gavin Smith. Check out this 99-yard pick six. And it's not like, he just came into this game and got a few picks. He's been doing this all season long. As a matter of fact, he's got to be one of the leaders in the state now for interceptions. What impressed you about Gavin Smith?
Gavin Smith played extremely well. He actually had 2 pick sixes against New Haven this past Friday, and he played his assignments very well. He was a ball hawk, read the football, and that's why he was able to play so well in the secondary for Columbia City. He read the ball well and played his assignments well.
So as you can see here, 6 interceptions on the season. And the 2 touchdowns this past week on the defensive side of the ball. Thad, talking about New Haven, are they a little beat up right now? Are they the same team that you've seen earlier in the year? Or what do you think of New Haven?
Well, New Haven's had some moments where their passing game was looking like they were going to be in rhythm. They had a big 3rd and 17 that they converted on. Dominic Wallace finds Braden Kuhnberger down the sideline, keeps the drive going. They're able to, at the very least, flip field position. And that made it look like, okay, New Haven's got some weapons. They can move the ball through the air. We know they can move the ball on the ground, although Columbia City really took their running game out of factor for that game. But the pieces are definitely there. I think Dominic Wallace, he's got a good arm. He can read coverage. Problem is, you go against a great defense like Columbia City, and that genuinely is a great defense. You're gonna run into some problems, especially when you're trying to find your rhythm and trying to bounce back from an 0-6 start.
Yeah, Columbia City very strong on the offense and defensive line this year, and still pretty young. So some people believe that this year's version of Columbia City, or I should say next year's team could be even better. It's hard to think about that without Bradbury or Stratton Fuller, but they got some good young pups. And one of those young guys is Gabe McDivitt, who actually got in the game in some mop-up time at quarterback. What do you think of the young quarterback?
Well, he definitely can run with the football. He gives them that weapon. So unfortunately, he didn't throw the ball in the game. So I don't know what to think of him as far as his passing ability. I'm sure that's something that he'll develop on as his career goes on. Like you said, he's young, but the running ability is definitely there, and that's certainly a tool that you can tap into, especially when you have all these different backs and you can run the football so well with your running backs. Throw in a little quarterback run game, and that's just an extra wrinkle for a team that's already, you might say, a well-oiled machine.
And here's a pick 6 by Andrew Firthmiller.
Yeah, Firthmiller got in the game in the second half. Backups were starting to get in, and it was Zach Firthmiller was one of the guys who got the pressure, knocked the ball in the air. Firthmiller right there at the right time, and he's able to take it in for the touchdown.
Boy, when things are going right, they're going right.
Absolutely. I mean, two twin sophomores combining for that pick 6.
Excellent. Well, now Joe Northern was up in Kendallville. Joe, did you get a pork burger?
I definitely did not get a chance to get a pork burger, unfortunately. I
Come
know,
on, Joe.
I know, but I can tell you a man who's had quite a few of them, Dylan Crail, of the night. He had 3 touchdowns on the evening for East Noble, and really, it was kind of a game that we thought it was going to be, okay, and Norwell's been riding some positive momentum to keep things going. No. That didn't happen. 2 immediate touchdowns from Crail to get this going. We also have this big defensive takeaway coming on the other side. And Crail again just spinning over. You see the hand in the air just saying, I've got this one way or another. He also got a really good defensive touchdown too, deep again in East Noble's own territory, or Norwell's own territory rather, early on in the third quarter just to put it out of reach. And I mean, this is a guy who is always going to continue to make names no matter what for East Noble, and is going to put them really right at the top. I love what I saw with Plattner as well. He's just as efficient on the run game and just did a great job of complimenting Crail, because we knew that with the conditions, again, rainy, ugly, windy, you have to think run is going to be the way. And I was kind of hoping that we might see a little bit more of an offensive attack from Norwell, but they just could only get maybe 3 or 4 plays in their own end zone, or not in their own end zone, their own red zone in this entire matchup. And not to mention their starting quarterback going down within the first couple minutes of half number 1, or I should say of the second quarter, really kind of just put the icing on the cake at the end of the day. And it just sets up nicely for that little NE8 showdown that you will be a part of coming up on Friday.
Yeah, and talk about Riley Biddle. East Noble, did they have to use him much as far as throwing the ball, or did they pretty much just stick to the ground too?
Just ground. I would say out of all the plays ran in the evening, it was just primarily keeping it on the ground and wear Norwell down early just by running it up the gut, get a little bit of a left side, find that right penetration, just continuing to keep running it up over and over. And again, taking a look at the first downs, yeah, Norwell had 8, East Noble only having 15. But in terms of total offensive yards, I mean, it's as clear as night as day, as you can see, 355 to 136. So again, I think Plattner and Crail are as dynamic of a duo as anybody's got it. And not to mention Tresh too, really getting some work done, not getting as much as we'd see on the scoring side of things, but kind of that unsung hero really setting Crail and Plattner up for success.
Yeah, it looked like here in the stats that Mason Treesh here, 1 touchdown, 5 receptions for 170 or 107 yards. We had a long of 70 yards. Was that the touchdown reception?
That was the touchdown. Yes, sir.
Just trying to find it over here.
All right. Well, actually,
oh, here.
Yep.
Oh,
there it is. There it is. Tresh with the huge grab, launches that one high, and then doesn't get the touchdown, but sets up Crail to get his first of the night.
Yeah, Joe, I have a question for you. You know, when Jeff and I saw them in that win against Leo, it felt like Plattner was just a nice offset, a nice change up back from the power of Krill. Is that kind of what you saw in them using?
I think Plattner's got his own strengths too,
sure,
that can complement Crail at the end of the day. I mean, yes, number 32's got the target on his back, but they got to keep the eyes open for number 2, because he's got a little bit more of like a broad ability to just kind of get past some of the bigger guys up front, I feel. So I kind of thought Plattner was a little bit more physical in some aspects compared to Crail.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and going over to Norwell, Caden Castle, what do you think from the quarterback position? Obviously, they're going up against arguably the best defense in the NE8. Leo in Columbia City has something to say about that, but what did you see from the quarterback position over there at Norwell?
I mean, I saw some signs of optimism, I guess you could say. I think Castle did a really great job until he went down midway through that second quarter, so we really didn't get to see a lot of his potential. And taking a look at, obviously, the receptions yards, yes, Gary Riley led the team with only 30 on the day, Merriweather with 21. But then taking a look at the rush, again, you kind of have to think, though, too, Castle is that dual threat. can help you get it in the air, can help you get it on the ground at the main time. And not having that, not sure if he'll be back this week or not, is going to bite Norwell just a little bit, because they were kind of looking for this game to be a little spoiler game for them. But obviously, East Noble came out hot, didn't look back at the end of the day. And now you have a chance to maybe salvage a win or two at home with DeKalb and then on the road at Huntington, because I mean, unless we've seen strange things happen and could see strange things happen with Columbia City, I don't know what's going to happen with that.
Yeah, DeKalb coming off the 21-0 loss against Huntington North kind of surprised me a little bit. I thought those two teams were pretty evenly matched, but for head coach Josh Gerber, it does look like it's set up nicely for him, for his team to bounce back here and pick up a little bit of steam heading into that sectional 28. You got Ole Miss, Heritage, Delta, Lures, Jay County. That's going to be a fun sectional right there as well.
Absolutely. I'm already kind of keeping my eyes on what we could see with Heritage and Lures potentially going against each other early on, or potentially for that sectional final. But then again, stranger things have happened. And, you know, I know we talk about with what's to come Friday night with East Noble and with Columbia City. I can tell you, haven't been around too many of the schools yet. East Noble's student section and their entire fan base were packing it up one way or another. So expect that to continue for their senior night too, because it's their last home game of the regular season. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, on the road at New Haven and Belmont to end the season. I mean, Coach Stewart in his first year, I don't think the schedule could have played out any better for them, where you have tough matchup. I mean, really, really tough matchup, good game, really, really tough matchup, good game, tough matchup. And then, yeah, so that's going to play out nicely for them if they can secure that W on Friday, hosting Columbia City. And you're right, that place is going to be rocking, because Columbia City, their fans show up too. Thad, horrible weather this past Friday, but did Columbia City have a packed house on their side?
Didn't quite have a packed house. I mean, I'd say that it was a little less than you might normally get these days at Columbia City. I think a lot of people probably just trying to avoid the rain.
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand. So the game that I wanted to hit was Landon's game, and it was 17-16. Carroll holding on for the victory. Harold Mack has just really provided a spark for Wayne in this game, going 7 for 9, 88 yards. And he has got a big target in Trey Dillard. Trey had two 2-point conversions in that game in the back of the end zone. So 50-50 balls are not an issue for Trey Dillard. This is a totally different Wayne team. Let's just go around the horn real quick. Hunter, what are your thoughts when you saw this game right here? Obviously, Nate Starks going for 175 yards becomes the program's all-time leading rusher, passing Jeffrey Becker, which is just pretty cool to say in itself. And you got to remember, that's a team that has Justin Tranquil and Drew Tranquil were running backs for them, you know, right around the 2010 era. And I do want to go back and say that Sam Stewart as a running back reminds you of Drew and Justin kind of back in the day in the backfield. But Hunter, your thoughts?
Yeah, I love to see that that Wayne is getting multiple players involved. I mean, having that target of Trey Dillard, like even just watching him on the basketball court and just imagining what he would be on 2-point conversions in the back of the end zone, just standing there. Like, you think if you just toss the ball up to him, he catches lobs on the basketball court, he should be able to just catch that in the back of the end zone. So good job by them to just see him getting involved in the wide receiver game. I know he was at quarterback to start the year, but moving him around, and I mean, that's a good piece there for the Generals to have in the back of the end zone and on the wide receiver game as well.
And here's another to Dillard.
Yeah, Dillard, HJ, call him Trey Dillard. He, you know, it reminds me of a Grant Leaper who played at Homestead, who's redshirting at Iowa right now as a tight end. He played basketball his whole life. Didn't really play football. I think he played in middle school, but didn't play at Homestead till his senior year. And then got a D1 scholarship at Iowa at one of the tight end U's in the country. Trey could do that. He's got the athleticism, the size to be able to be a Division I tight end. Even at the MAC level. I as far as I know, his love is basketball, and he's got some good opportunities there at the next level as well. But I think this is just opening the eyes of so many recruiters out there, especially in this area of what Trey Diller could do. And Grant Leaper is a perfect example of it can be done here in Fort Wayne. Even going back to Paxton Bergdahl at Concordia several years ago, didn't play football ever, and then came out for his senior year and ended up turning that into a JC offer where he went down and played in Texas and stuff. So, it's possible to do. And I think for Coach Haydock, it was the right move. Austin Mack is just a game-changing player. His IQ is top level on the football field, and watching him go, I think it was like 8 for 9 or whatever it may be, was very impressive. And then, like you said, sharing the ball with Stallings, Mack, and Nelson running the ball. I mean, that's good things to move into the rest of the season and into sectionals for Wayne. And also, I know it was raining and everything, but holding Jimmy to 71 yards and 50% completion, that's impressive for the Wayne defense as well, even though Starks and Jimmy got off running the ball.
Yeah, and Jimmy with a beautiful pass to Jaden Van Pelt. We'll pull that one up. I mean, it was just a nice lofted throw, perfect timing. And here it is. This play was on 4th down, and this opened up the scoring in the game for Carroll. But yeah, going back to Harold Mack, we had just showed his touchdown run. And when you bunch everything in like that, all the guys on the goal line, wasn't that pretty pass?
That was beautiful. He had a beautiful little change on the ball by the wide receiver in the back of the corner. He was expecting it left shoulder. It came kind of right over the top of his helmet and just laid it in there. That was pretty on both ends.
But look at this. This is just begging for some kind of QB bootleg. Would you not agree? I mean, and when you bunch it in, you better bunch your defense in too, because you got Kemar Nelson back there.
Right. Yeah. You hand the ball off. He's a bulldozer. So, yeah, I mean, you got to prepare for both, or you just have them run in and lead block and have Mac take it as a sneak. So, yeah, I mean, I think they figured some things out there out on the southeast side of town.
Yeah. So throw Wayne right in there, because that 2 of 3, 2 wins and 3 losses means nothing at this point in this tough sectional 19.
Yeah, that's an insane sectional. There's no question.
Thad, did you have anything to add on Wayne? I know you've seen them a few times.
Well, that game against Carroll, you saw the stat. Josiah Stallings only 33 yards, did get 11 carries. He's someone who he is someone to watch out for. A little down night against Carroll, but he's their primary back that Wayne uses, and he's someone that I suspect will get a lot of touches this coming Friday night against Concordia, because he gets the rock in his hands. He can do some real good things with it. Now, he's not as big as Kemar, but he can give you some power at the goal line as well. He's not afraid to take on contact. So I think that 33-yard, him being held to 33 yards, was probably an anomaly for the rest of the season.
17 tackles for Kemar Nelson. Every single week, it is just the same thing. He's absolutely having a dominant senior season. I mean, you just cannot wait for him to get his first offer. It's going to be such a time to celebrate. Then over on the other end, Coleman Tipton with 16 tackles. Eli Newhouser with 14 for Carroll. So Carroll's defense, man, they're getting better and better, it seems like, week in, week out.
Yeah, and sophomore and junior right there, Jeff. I mean, come on. You got another sophomore in Asher Wagner. Who's an outstanding baseball player, kind of like Newhouser. But they got some really young, talented players. And how many times we got to talk about it? It's the youth program. The youth program that's feeding up into Carroll. It's starting to pay off big time, and it has.
Yeah, and we said the same thing about the little Cubs over there in Leo.
Leo.
That's definitely helped that program, as they've been a perennial contender for the NE8 for the past 15 years.
Yep, 100%. Yep, and that was Coach Rohrbacher that started that. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's going to get something going out like there in Woodland. Not the numbers like Leo, but why not? You got to start somewhere.
Speaking of, huge shout out to Coach Rohrbacher and the Woodland Warriors going on the road to Jay County and getting the dub. That's a huge win for that team, who now it's looking like Woodland could possibly end up the season as a over 500 team. So they're just going to have to win 2 of the next 3 games. Of course, they finished with Adams Central.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Drew Fleek was outstanding in that game, by the way. If you had to, I think you could put Drew Fleek as maybe a Northeast Indiana Player of the Week consideration. There were a few good. Nate Stark's another one for their performances for sure.
Yeah.
Well, looking ahead to this Friday, we're going to start off with Hunter, who has Northrop against Snyder. This is going to be a Northrop home game at Spooler Stadium, so they'll keep the Bear in the center of the field. But Hunter, what do you like about this game? What are you excited to see?
I mean, hey, I asked you if I could do it for one reason and one reason only: the rival game between Snyder and Northrop. Snyder, though, I mean, looking to make it 28 straight wins against Northrop would be huge for the Snyder Panthers. I know Northrop and Bishop Dwenger, they had a little bit of a battle last week. Obviously, the weather throws in another factor too as well. But from what I've saw on tape so far, Callison with another game, he threw it a lot through the air too as well. 32 times you see there on your screen.
Mm-hmm.
That was more than what Andrews, almost as more as what Andrews had there with Concordia. So just throwing the ball through the air. I think it's going to be an interesting, I wouldn't say interesting matchup, but Coach Quentin Bowen, old offensive coordinator for Snyder. So I know him and Coach Tittman, and both those programs know a lot about each other. I can tell you that for sure.
Wow. And look at Dwenger. They got Jordan Fabini in the backfield and Nick Pelkington in the backfield. So they're adding a few more weapons to their arsenal as well.
50 carries on that game for Dwenger.
I gotta love it. Averaging 5.7 per. I mean, why not?
And for people that don't know, Jordan Fabini is the youngest son of Jason Fabini,
Okay.
The New York Jet, Washington Redskin, Dallas Cowboy, but was drafted by the Jets, of course, and was the first rookie starter for Bill Parcells in the history of Bill Parcells' career. So that tells you what Jason Fabini was about. He's also the offensive line coach there on the varsity level at Dwenger. But yeah, Jordan Fabini is a name you're going to want to know here in the future for sure.
Hey, and also shout out to Tommy Kaufman, John Kaufman, Purdue Fort Wayne headsman basketball coach. His son getting his first appearances in the game. Obviously went 0 for 2, but good to see them throwing in a sophomore quarterback. Always good to see as well for Bishop Dwenger.
Yeah, go down. Okay, 5'10", 140 on Tommy.
Yep.
Yeah, so and Jordan Fabini, his older brother, John Michael Fabini, was a terror as an edge rusher. Is that kind of Jordan's position on defense too?
Yeah, they had leading up, it was more of a fullback. He will run tailback and play any of the linebacker positions. Okay. He's real heady for the game. He was battling injuries this whole beginning of the season, so I guarantee you he would have been in there earlier in the year if it wasn't for some injuries. But what that happens as a youngster trying to play varsity sports. It's a whole different game once you move from freshman straight to varsity. That is not easy to do in the game of football,
especially with the schedule that Dwenger plays.
Yeah, 100%. There's no doubt about that. Had a real good game by Dylan Tittman leading the team in tackles. That's Devin Tittman's younger brother, who was an absolute dynamo running the ball for Dwenger in his day, just running over cats. They got some really good youngsters there at Bishop Dwenger taking their lumps this year, but I think they'll be all right as we get later in the season and into next year as well.
Yeah, obviously we're not covering the Dwenger Lures game. This is rivalry week.
That's an easy one.
Easy for you to say. But yeah, just real quick, and then this is for open to anybody, but you guys' thoughts on Bishop Luers coming into Dwenger. Bishop Luers pretty much all season long has been one-dimensional, and this is not an easy team to run the ball against.
Yeah, and Dwenger has been one-dimensional for the most part. They've had their spots, but the injuries and the youthfulness of Henry Jordan, and then Nick O'Keefe as well, that played as a sophomore in that Northside game. They're going to have to be able to move the chains with the pass, or go on first down, going with passes, and they're going to have to complete those to make sure they're not playing behind the sticks, Jeff. But I think Luers is Coach. I mean, they are just absolutely feeling themselves, for a lack of a better term. They are so confident out there on the south side of town that it's going to take a really, really special game from Dwenger to beat them, even at home in the Battle of the Bishops, where both fans will be out there big time. That Dwenger side will be absolutely packed.
Well, obviously Dario Williams has been one of the
Yes.
best running backs in the area, and we did have a comment here. This is by Quentin Thomas. Said we were close. I'm not sure. I think it was referring to the South Side game when we were talking about it, but yeah, we feel you.
Yep.
Up next, Tim, you're going to be covering Southside. This is the totem pole game, the longest rivalry in Northeast Indiana. Always a heated affair. I mean, throw out records and all that when these two teams get together for the totem pole. And this year, the game is at Northside. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think, it's like Dwenger. I think Southside's going to have to play a pretty flawless game to beat Northside. They didn't have a lot of opportunity last week with the weather and playing on the grass at Luers. Now it wouldn't matter. If that game was played on turf against Luers, I think we have maybe the same outcome with Luers winning, but it is not a 10-8 game. There's no way. I know in that second half, they ran Tristan Newsome on several quarterback draws, not even willing to hand the ball off. They, right there, Caleb Kingley, not at all. 2 catches by Malik Moore, but I think Malik Moore goes back to the way it was the week prior. And I think he has a monster game. And I think Newsome will continue to roll. Tristan Newsome has been one of the best surprises in the SAC this year. With his progression of limiting his mistakes, he has done a great job as Tristan Newsome. And then, of course, everybody knows how he can run the ball. He's one of the quickest players in the 260. So, I think the totem pole game is always fun. I've done several of them. You usually get a lot of alumni out there on both sides of the field. And I'm looking forward to it there at Chambers Field. But I truly think that Southside's going to have to have somebody just step up tremendously and play a pretty flawless game as far as turnovers to be able to get that win against Northside.
When you look at Tristan Newsome and what he's doing in his senior year, it reminds you most recently of like Kobe Meyer from Heritage or Laban Davis from Eastside, what those guys were able to do on the football field. But Tristan Newsome is doing this against some of the top competition in not only Northeast Indiana, but the state. He played well against Lawrence North, but definitely having a fantastic season to where Tristan Newsome probably will be in consideration for the Northeast Indiana Player of the Year when it's all said and done.
Yeah, he should be. There's no doubt about it that he's right at the top when you talk about anybody in Northeast Indiana, especially in Fort Wayne and especially the Summit Athletic Conference. This is, and also, Jeff, this is a must win for Luers. It's not about the SAC at this point. It's about getting momentum rolling into sectionals in that 5A sectional where they got to finish the season at Wayne and then host Carroll. Those are not going to be easy ball games. So I think they got to get this win against Southside to start building that momentum the last 2 games of the season. and into that sectional.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, this is not a gimme, and
Nope.
Carroll, obviously one of the tougher games they're going to play year in, year out. So
Right.
should be a fun one out there at Chambers Field to get to see
Yes,
the
sir.
young Archers taking on Northside.
And I'll have my boy Joseph Walker up there giving me updates and stats. So I always love to hang out at Chambers Field.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Joe's a great guy to be in the press box with and just talk football. And honestly, all sports. He does stats for basketball, and he's also the softball head coach.
Correct.
He does soccer too. He's out there during soccer too. I was with him last week. We were just chatting it up in the press box. So it was fun to be with Coach Walker.
I swear I saw a sleeping bag in that press box. That's probably Joe's. I'm just guessing.
Thad, what would you think the Southside needs to do to have success in this game against Northside?
I think the biggest thing is going to have to be, first of all, on defense, they're going to have to be have gap integrity because you've got Southside also has a number of running backs that they can lean on. We've touched on a few of them. Chris Moon, he's a guy who can run for power. Josiah Malone, he's a weapon in the run game and the receiving game as well. Javon Irby, he's a sophomore. He's a guy who has shown lots of ability. But KJ Alexander, one thing you have to pay attention with him is, he's not necessarily looking to run the football. He'll roll out looking to pass, but taking off and running the football is part of his game. So Northside is going to have to be fundamentally sound on defense going up against Southside. Now, of course, I think Northside's won a number of these totem pole games in recent years, but they're going to have to pay attention to the dual threat and KJ Alexander, as well as all the different backs that Southside has in their arsenal.
Yeah, Northside has definitely owned this series as of late. I'm not sure when the last time Southside got this one. I thought it was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Win, and here it is. That was a win against South. There it is. The loss in 2017, so 35-22. Been a while for Southside, and I don't know if it's going to be this year, but Coach Goodwill's got it gearing up. If not this year, maybe it'll be next year.
Yep, absolutely.
If he gets it this year, just think of the momentum that builds for that program.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, heading into the offseason. 100% Thad, because you win a game like that, and next thing you know, kids that didn't come out for the team this year are starting to think about it. And maybe they join off-season weights, or maybe they wrestle or run track and get in Coach Goodwill's favor, and they come out for the team next year, because got to believe there's a handful of guys over there at Southside that could be playing football, should be playing football for the Archers.
Yeah, and they'll definitely have they'll definitely be on notice if the Archers can come away with the win against Northside, and then also they finish against Northrop. They're probably looking at that saying, you know what, that might be one that we can come away with towards the end of the season, or at least they probably will be when it gets there.
Yeah. Yeah, and even with Lures, that's a neighborhood rivalry. I mean, those two are so close in proximity that, a lot of the guy Goodwill came from Lures. He was an offensive assistant there. So, yeah, it's going to be fun to watch that young team continue to develop, and I think Friday is going to be a heck of a game. And Thad, you're going to be at Concordia for the rivalry that's known worldwide. That is Wayne at Concordia. We joke. It just happens that that matchup falls on rivalry week, but Concordia, you wish them the best. You hope they can get it back on track, but this is a Wayne team that's like a locomotive. It feels like they're building up steam right now.
Yeah, when they can get their running game going, they can do good things. They got all kinds of playmakers on defense. I tell you what, one matchup that I'm kind of looking forward to is, when Concordia has the ball, they got some really good weapons, particularly at wide receiver. It's an air raid offense, so they're going to spread the football around. Wayne is very talented. They're talented in just about every level of defense, but particularly in the secondary. Adrian Wooten, he's a really good cover corner for them. You got a couple of safeties in Darion Evans and Rashad King, a couple of guys who can go back and make plays on the football. So there's plenty of talent to be had there, and Wayne is going to have their secondary ready against all these different receivers that Concordia is going to throw at them. Concordia Avery Cook, he's a very reliable receiver, 6'2". He can work the sidelines, work the middle. Jalen Campos, Noah Trent, those guys can work the inside of the field. And Jack Belshner, he's kind of you might call him your red zone threat. He's a big 6'3" guy, and he can run those fade routes, and he can make the catches in one-on-one matchups. I remember seeing him do that on Concordia's first drive against Snyder back in week 3.
Yeah, and then coming over here is Thomas right here, who had a nice comment for us. Quentin, we appreciate you tuning into the program at 5'10", 183, and he's putting together a nice season. We just showed you he's one of the many generals who has a sack on the year, 18 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss. So this is a dynamic player who can be all over the field, sideline to sideline, and Wayne has a number of those types of players. It's one of those things where they see each other in practice every single day, to where, obviously coming into this season, Wayne, one of the better defensive backfields in the SAC. So you just add Thomas to that list of great defenders. And once again, like I said, this is a team on the rise, going to be a tough out in that tough sectional.
Yep.
Absolutely. The talent is definitely there. The toughness is definitely there. This is a team that plays very physical, and that's no doubt that's going to be their MO probably as long as Coach Haydock remains there.
And the thing is that you can't say that about all the teams in the SAC, but you're right. Wayne really is a physical team. And I got to imagine that starts with guys like Kemar Nelson, Jacob Sharon, and Harold Mack, who are just tough as can be.
Yeah, it definitely does, especially with with Nelson being that great two-way player, and his power running ability and his ability to get after the quarterback. Mack, of course, is leading the Generals in sacks this year with 7 sacks on the season. Of course, Lanas Martin, he's not too far behind him, kind of one of the unsung heroes, but Lanas has 4.5 sacks on the year. This is a team that's really getting after the quarterback, and a number of different guys are doing that. Bravion Query, Jaden Bushy, Javante Eldridge. He's just a freshman, and he's shown plenty of ability. I mean, that's maybe a little indication just with Javante getting in there and making an impact so early in his career. The future looks bright for these Generals.
Yeah, Tyree and Javante for sure. Kemar Nelson now 75 tackles. That's through 5 games. That's not through 6 games.
Insane.
14.5 tackles for loss. I mean, this is just unbelievable. He's another guy that I think you have to have in consideration for Northeast Indiana Player of the Year. And it's kind of crazy to think. I haven't even really – well, Newsom's a quarterback, but my top 3 right now would probably be Dylan Krell, Tristan Newsom, and Kemar Nelson. Can you guys think of anybody else that really should be thrown in there? Maybe like a Eli Tagulas from Heritage.
Jimmy Sullivan
for sure.
I definitely think Tagulas should be a part of that list. Perhaps Nate Foster from Leo. He's had such a big impact for their running game this year.
That's a good one.
I was thinking Foster too.
Yep, that's a good one.
Brock Schott.
Starks and Brandon Logan, I think, too, as well. Nate Starks, Brandon Logan, those two.
Yeah, Brock Schott's another Leo guy. Great pass rusher, great tight end.
Okay, so maybe it's not narrowed down to 3 just yet.
Not yet, Jeff.
We're getting there, though.
We're getting there.
See, Columbia City at East Noble. I've got this one. I mean, obviously, who's going to get it done through the air? Grayson Bradbury, Riley Biddle. This is going to be a fun game in Kendallville.
Yeah.
2 tough teams. 2 teams that like to run the ball, can run the ball. Both teams are big and stout. I got to tell you, this thing's about 50-50 going into it. You got to give the edge to East Noble because they have the home crowd working with them. But this is going to be a fun game right here. Let me see if they got the capsules up, and they do already. Let's see who John Harrell's going to pick. They got Columbia City 35-24. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Hold up. Not so fast, my friend. Lee Corso would say. I don't know about all that. To me, Jeff, we saw how well Biddle can throw the ball and his wide receiving core. I think that's the difference in Friday's game is the throwing ability of Biddle. Not saying that Columbia City can't, they just haven't had to that much. So maybe they can. But from what I saw live against Leo in a pretty good defense and a top level front, Landon Hepner going to Army in the secondary, Riley Biddle was so impressive, and his wide receivers absolutely go get the ball. Then you have Krill, and then of course what Joe Northern was talking about with Plattner and his love. I mean, it's going to be a tough matchup. And what did we see with East Noble when they played Leo? When Leo did not show that they could throw the ball consistently, if it wasn't for a couple of great runs from Foster, they wouldn't have had the numbers that he had. But you take Foster out of that, the East Noble's defense is going to pin their ears back and make Columbia City throw the ball, and that could be the difference as well on defense. Yeah,
most definitely. And you look at the wide receivers. I mean, obviously Stratton Fuller, one of the best wide receivers in the whole state. Per 247 Sports, as he's ranked in the top 50 in the class of 2025. But you go over to East Noble and you start looking at some of their wide receiver stats. I mean, Tim, I think they're deep. I think they got three legit wide receivers on that team. When you look at Krell, Plattner, Phillips, we haven't even gotten down to Hatton.
Right.
Oh, this is rushing.
That's rushing. There you go. Swagger, Treesh, and Hatton.
Hatton possibly could be the best of all of them.
Yeah, and we saw his return ability on that interception, 92 yards or whatever it was against Leo, where he read the quarterback's eyes in a square and came off his guy and played center field and just picked that ball off. They are an impressive group from East Noble. I would find it hard to believe John Harrell is the best in the business. There's no doubt about that. But I know he's not always in the prediction game.
No, that's for the Sagarin ratings. So
okay, right.
Thad, you saw Columbia City next week. Do you think they can win by 2 touchdowns?
Well, I think they definitely can win by 2 touchdowns. But honestly, I think I could, and I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but I could see this being a defensive struggle. Something like 21-14, 14-7, 14-10. 17-14, somewhere around there. One of the reasons I say that is because I was extremely impressed with Columbia City's defense last week. Now, I know they're going up against a now 0-6 New Haven squad, but they went up against a team with DJ Simpson, a guy who's averaging over 100 rushing yards per game, and they kept him in check extremely well. And they kept him in check by playing good, fundamentally sound football. You'd have one play where Dominic Wallace keeps the ball on his own read, and he's tackled when he doesn't have, Simpson's tackled when he doesn't have the ball, but Wallace is brought down for a loss of a yard on the play by Wyatt Freeman and Corbin McIntosh. Columbia City has so many good, talented players up front that they can definitely handle the running game. Now, how well will they be able to handle a running game like what East Noble has? We'll have to wait and see, but I would not be surprised if this game turns out to be more on the low-scoring end.
Well, looking at East Noble, their offensive line, it's actually one of the bigger offensive lines in Northeast Indiana, averaging 259 a man across the board. So we'll see if that offensive line can get the push they need against Columbia City. And by the way, only one of the 2 starting offensive linemen are seniors, and the rest are juniors for East Noble. So that'll be a fun one right there. And it really makes you wonder what East Noble's plan is for Stratton Fuller. If they're planning to man up on him, maybe put a Mason Treesh on him or a Logan Hatton, Alexander Scott. I mean, all of those guys have 3 interceptions apiece on the season. A very, very good defensive backfield. Probably one of the more underrated defensive backfields in Northeast Indiana. Would you agree with that one, Tim?
Yeah, I would agree 100%. Definitely not talked about enough. And then that has a lot to do with how awesome Krell is. When you got a player like that, he brings a lot of attention to your program, and some people can get overlooked from time to time. That's They are. I'm telling you that threesome of Trish, Hatton, and Swagger impressive, and then defensively as well. It's a very. I was super impressed out at Leo in that Northeast State win 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, they got Anthony Mitchner and Alexander Scott round out that defensive backfield there for East Noble. Super excited for that game. We are so slammed on Friday night with volleyball and hockey and this, that, and the other that, would be nice if we could double up on that one right there, but not going to happen for this week. We're just going to try to get through the weekend and have some good games out there for everybody. Anything else that anyone else wanted to add? Oh, Joe Northern, you're going to be at Huntington North in Leo, and that game became much more intriguing after we saw what Huntington North did against DeKalb last week. I'm not sure that anybody really kind of predicted that one right there, but your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, that kind of really raised my eyebrows a little bit too, seeing that Huntington North did knock off DeKalb, and not many people were expecting that. And also, too, yes, you have 1 and 2 going against each other, but now you've got 3 and 4 in the NE8 going up against each other. So if Columbia City were to fall, and if Leo were to win, that puts not only East Noble in the driver's seat, but at the same time, it kind of makes things a little more interesting in the league going through the last couple of weeks of the regular season. Now, of course, Leo, they had been the darlings of the NE8, and why not? You have Nathan Foster, who's been ripping it up in rushing. We've talked about him, and Ladden Hopner, too, getting just over 40 yards per game. It's going to be those guys that I feel like are always going to continue to play a factor and keep Leo at bay. But that also said, taking a look at kind of the advantage of victories this year, this isn't as explosive of a Leo team that I feel like we've seen in quite some time, trying to hang their own against some of those upper level opponents. I mean, yes, they got the win against Bishop Luers. They took care of Angola, but had the loss to East Noble. So I feel like there's just something missing with them. And what I know, I kind of said it was a trap game for East Noble and Norwell last week. Clearly that didn't happen. Why do I feel like this game against Huntington North could very well be just that coming up on Friday?
Yeah, Huntington North, one of the best two-way players in Northeast Indiana. When you look at the quarterback, here's Foster right here, averaging 9.1 yards per carry.
That's because he's Tyreek Hill fast.
He is. That's what speed do. I mean, that's
he's a speedster.
Yeah, and we don't have the totals yet for the area leaders, but going back to Huntington North, what they've been able to do, let me pull them up here real quick, but their quarterback, a two-way stud for them, has just been very solid.
And just you mentioned, just the way that they've been able to turn it around south in Huntington. I mean, if you somehow sneak a win against Leo, or at least in the next couple of weeks, you're going to get something which we haven't seen with the Vikings in quite some time. And that is a winning season. I mean, scrolling all the way back to, at least 2018, a team that hasn't had a winning record in Viking country as it stands. Heck,
wow, longer than that.
7 years ago. I mean,
there's 500 records.
There it is, 09.
Yeah, 500 record back in 09. But even at that, I mean, there's a lot of optimism to be had at Huntington North right now. And I think even if you're staying close with Leo, that's going to make things awfully interesting at the end of the day.
Yeah, Coach Eschbach doing a great job there with the program. So, all right, guys, anything else you guys wanted to add before we hop off and jump into week number 7? It's going fast, isn't it?
Ooh, yeah, it is.
It always does.
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, on behalf of all the guys, I'm Jeff Mahoney. This is the Summit City Sports Report 2024 Roundtable. Have a great rest of your week, everybody, and we will see you at the field on Friday. Have a good night.
See you, everybody.
Bye.